Hi, for this video what we are going to do is we are going to solve a quadratic equation by factoring. For this equation we must first get it into standard form where it's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a, b, and c just represent any number. So basically what this is saying is that we want everything, anytime we have a quadratic, we want everything on one side. So in order to do that, what we have to do is we have to first simplify. So I would have 6x squared minus 6 equals 5x. We're still not in the same format as what this says, and with this we want to make sure that our x term is in the middle and our x squared term comes first. So we would keep the 6x squared. We're going to move this 5x to the other side, and anytime a value changes sides, the opposite of it goes to the other side. So if it changes sides, it changes signs. So since this was a positive 5x, we are going to make it a negative 5x minus 6 equals 0. And for this one, you could always use the quadratic formula. So if you get to this point here and you see that you have a number in front of x squared, you can always just jump directly to the quadratic formula. But in order to see if it's factorable, a lot of times, if there's a number in front, I will just use the quadratic formula. But for this one, I know it's factorable, so let's go ahead and factor. So what I want to do is we always take the first number times the last number, and we have to pay attention to the sign. So we want to find two values that multiply together to give us 36 that add up to be our middle number. So we're basically looking for what did we add together in the middle. Remember, when you FOIL, you always add something together in the middle to get this term. So if we go through, because we need a negative 36, that tells me that I need one positive value and one negative value. And because it's a negative 5, that tells me that my larger value has to be negative. So some factors that multiply together to give us 36 are like 36 and 1, 2 and 18, 6 and 6, 9 and 4, 3 and 12. So there's quite a few of them that multiply together to give us 36. But of those, the ones that work are positive 4 and negative 9, because positive 4 times negative 9 gives me negative 36, and positive 4 plus negative 9 gives me negative 5. And here is where you have several options that you can do. Just so that you can visually see what I'm doing is I'm going to take this and I'm going to separate it into my factors. And I'm going to take this first term and I'm going to write it as 6x. I know that I can't leave it like this because 6 times 6 does not add up to be, or it does not multiply together to give me 6. But I'm going to take these values here, the positive 4 and the negative 9, and I'm just going to plug them in here. I have to do something to these in order for this to work out because I know that this doesn't work. So what I want to do is I want to look at these values, and like I said, you can jump directly from here to this step if you can see what's going on. So if you can look at the 6 and the 4 and automatically you see what they have in common and take it out, you don't need this middle step. But what we're going to do is we're going to see what do 6 and 4 have in common. So since they're both even, I can divide both of them by 2. So what I'm going to do is just write the result of dividing them each by 2. I'm going to do this same thing with this one. I'm going to look at the 6 and the 9. And like I said, I could have just looked at them here and figured out, okay, I know that they have a 3 in common, so I'm going to divide out a 3. So when I do that, I get 2x minus 3. Basically, what this is achieving here is it helps me to see what did I distribute in to get those values here. So if I look at this and I check to make sure that this multiplies together, 3x times 2x gives me the 6x squared. 2 times negative 3 gives me the negative 6 at the end. And then the negative 3, or the positive 3 times the negative 3 gives me the negative 9. And the 2 times 2 gives me the 4, which I added together to get the negative 5. So we basically just undistributed. We had to figure out what did I have to distribute in to get those values so that I could add my middle terms together. Once you get to this step, it's very easy because we just take each one and set it equal to 0 and solve. So for the first one, we would subtract the 2 because the opposite of positive 2, remember when it moves to the other side, it becomes negative. And then we would just divide both sides by 3. So our first solution is x equals negative 2/3. The second solution, I forgot to put the equals 0, but we would do the exact same thing. We would move the negative 3 to the other side, so we get 2x equals positive 3. So x ends up being 3/2. So these would be our two solutions. Remember, it's always good to check your work. So when you're checking this, remember that you're just plugging back into your original equation. You're replacing x with what it's equal to. So I would just plug in, and I would most likely do this one in a calculator because you're more likely to make mistakes. So I would do negative 2/3 in parentheses. Make sure that anytime you are squaring a fraction that you put it in parentheses. Minus 1, and we're going to see, does that equal 5 times negative 2/3? Okay, so if I pull up my calculator to help me, I have a TI-84, but you can do this in any calculator. You would just type in the 6 parentheses, and I'm going to do another parenthesis because I want to put the negative 2/3 in parentheses, squared, minus 1. And I know that this is going to give me a fraction answer, so I'm just going to do math answer as a fraction. And I get negative 10/3. I'm going to do the same thing with the other one. The other side was 5 times negative 2/3. And I'm going to do the same thing, math answer as a fraction. And notice it gives me the same thing. So since both sides gives me negative 10/3, I know that this is equal, so I know that this solution works. To check the other one, we would do the same thing. We would do 6 times 2/3 squared minus 1 equals 5 times, sorry, that was supposed to be 3/2. Let me erase that. Looked at the wrong thing. Okay, so I would plug in the 3/2. And with this one, both sides end up giving me 15/2 or 7.5. So this one also works out. I just did it on a separate sheet of paper, but I just wanted to show you how you would check it in your calculator. So with this, to recap, I would have got the same answer had I used the quadratic formula. So if you start with something like this and you don't even want to check to see if it's factorable, you can always just start by using quadratic formula. As always, thanks for watching. Please make sure to check out other videos that I have and frequently check back for more content.